So I do need to clarify, there's probably going to be multiple different ways to play some of these cards, like Suicune, for example. It's going to help a lot of different water archetypes, and I think this is the one that stood out to me the most so far, but I would like to test it out with Greninja, also maybe with Prim too, and a couple other different decks, because it does give you some extra draw power and help with consistency with its legendary Pulse ability. This allows you to draw a card when you end your turn with Suicune in the active zone. The legendary trio all have this ability, so keep that in mind. And its attack is pretty decent too. It does 20 damage for each bench Pokemon, yours and your opponent's, so it could potentially, probably not going to happen too often if we're being honest, but it could potentially do 120 damage for 2 energy. Most of the time though, you're probably going to fill your bench and your opponent's probably going to only have like 1 to 2 Pokemon on theirs. But that's still a good amount of damage. You're probably going to be doing 80 for 2, which is not bad. And the fact that this lets you draw every turn is just fantastic. So you're going to be able to draw into some of your support. Milotic is our brand new line introduced in the trailer. Maybe we'll get even more water support. I don't know. That would be insane. That would blow these out of the water. But Milotic has a really cool ability, Healing Ripples. It says once during your turn, when you play this Pokemon from your hand to evolve one of your Pokemon, you may heal 60 damage from one of your water types. So that means you can't use 2 of these per turn because it says once per turn, but it's a free Lily when you evolve it. So that's going to keep Suicune alive for much longer. And we have a brand new baby Ramper with Mantike. It's going to generate a water energy for free. You can do this on your first turn and then retreat and go into Suicune on your second turn, attacking with Crystal Waltz. Now I have Magikarp in here. You're probably wondering, there's no Gyarados. Why are you running Magikarp? It's because it has the same stat line as Feebas, but they haven't put Feebas in this database for the deck builder yet. So this is just kind of being a placeholder for now. I also have 1 Palkia because you're going to be able to keep Suicune alive with your Milotic. You're going to be able to charge energy faster with Mantike. And obviously we have an Irida too for healing. So I do believe later on in the game, you're going to have enough energy for Palkia and you'll be able to attack doing 150 damage with Dimensional Storm. And that's obviously a huge attack and really, really helpful for cleaning up and finishing the game. Also, I do have 1 elemental switch because when you're generating energy with this guy, you're going to maybe put some on Milotic some of the time and you might need to transfer it up. Or later in the game, when you retreat with Leaf out of Suicune because it gets too low and you can't keep it alive anymore, you can retreat into Palkia. Or just whenever you want to attack with it, you retreat whatever you have with energy, with Leaf, and then switch up. So it adds a lot of flexibility. And Leaf is crucial because if you start with anything in your active zone, you want to go into your baby, you need to Leaf. Or if you start with Palkia, you're kind of cooked. If you don't have this card, you're just stuck and you lose. You're probably wondering why Geo's in here, and that's because we need an Oricorio out. Oricorio would mess us up. I mean, it specializes in destroying this deck pretty much, but Milotic gives us some help. It does 60 damage for 2 energy, which is not too bad. Combine that with Geo and you have enough damage to destroy an Oricorio in 1 attack. So we do have an Oricorio out. I don't want to see any of the comments about how it's destroying this deck. There is options to deal with it. And then we just have Cyrus and Sabrina because they're just excellent cards. So that's my first Suicune deck that I would want to try. Again, I'm probably going to build more versions in the future. Next up, we have Entei, and this is the guy I was the most worried about. But actually, after looking at this deck that I built, I really, really like it with Typhlosion. So Typhlosion has this cool ability, Fire Breath, where you can burn them from the bench. So that's 20 damage from the bench and potentially more if they stay burned. Now, Entei, if you're curious about what its attack is, 2 energy, 60 damage, and then if you have 4, it'll do 120. But that is very, very expensive. 4 energy is going to take a while. You can probably get it going if you start with Magby going first because you get that extra energy generation for free with Magby. But what I really like about Entei is because it has the ability Legendary Pulse, you're going to draw into your Typhlosion line very, very quickly. That's always been the issue of Typhlosion in the past, is you can't draw into it fast enough. But with Entei, you're going to be able to and get that extra burn damage. I'm just running Guzma because it's good. Leaf is also really good when you want to leaf out an Entei in your active zone or Typhlosion, whatever. Cyrus, Sabrina, also great. I think you need Giant Cape because Entei has only 140 HP. You need a little bit more. Communication's good because you're running a stage 2 line and you want to communicate and get Typhlosion up as soon as humanly possible. Getting Typhlosion and getting that extra damage on him is excellent. So make sure you try to do that, prioritize that. Other than that, I think this deck might be actually pretty solid. It has some good damage output with the burn and with the potential to actually get Blazing Beatdown up. Maybe honestly, you just have one in the active zone and then one on the bench that you're building. And then once the active zone one dies, you send out the one on the bench. You're doing 140 damage with the burn. So let me know what you guys think of this Entei deck. I couldn't really think of too many great ways to play him. I was thinking you could play him with Blaze Phalion. I know I pronounced that name wrong. I'm sorry. But you could probably play with that, maybe Turtonator too. But those don't feel that strong or sound that strong when I think about it. I think this might be worth a shot. Next up, we have a new Prim deck. Now, I do think there's multiple ways to play this card. I feel like I keep saying that. I might try Prim with Suicune because you're going to be able to draw into it pretty quick. I would just be worried about like the amount of energy that you have. But instead of running Milotic, maybe you throw Suicune in here instead. But I'm very tempted to try this first because Milotic, like I explained earlier, heals you for 60. So if you combine that healing with Lily, that's 120. And then Sparkling Area also heals Prim for another 20. You're going to be healing for 140 HP in one turn. We also have Irida in here because it's going to help heal Milotic too if you want to battle with it and attack with it. Geo's also in here for, again, Oricorio. Oricorio is kind of destined to beat this. I think I like this version. I think the real reason I settled on this version over the Suicune is because Suicune and Prim don't really have an out for Oricorio, and I like Milotic better for dealing with it. I think it's just overall like a good option for one-shotting it, and you can just heal with it to keep Prim alive when you retreat it to the bench. I personally like X speed because both of these basics have a 1 retreat cost, so if you start with either of these and you get Mantike on the bench, you want to X speed into it. But yeah, it's a pretty basic deck. I have Cape in here because it's going to give some more sustainability for Prim, as well as, you know, keep your baby alive. If your baby's in the active zone with 30 HP, sometimes that can be a little bit scary. You can be cooked with it. Same with Magikarp. Sorry, I tricked myself. This is supposed to be Feebas, but it's just not in the database. Same with keeping Feebas alive. If you start with it, Cape can be good. So yeah, that's what this deck is. I think Prim is going to come back in the meta more than we've seen it in the past. Do I know if it's going to be tier 1? Probably not. I could see it being tier 3 at most if someone figures out the most optimal way to build it, but this is what I'm kind of leaning towards so far. Let me know what you think in the comments about this one. Next up, we have my favorite card that was shown in the trailer, and it's Raichu EX. I think this guy is going to be very strong in this deck. Now, again, we're going to have to test this in rank, so I'm doing all of this without actually playing with the cards. But Raichu, if you don't know, it has an attack that only does 60 damage, so not too much, but it does 10 damage to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon, and that is great because you're going to be able to manipulate the bench with Cyrus, and then combining Cyrus with this Pikachu can win you games because this Pikachu comes out swinging, doing 150 damage. Now, this might sound like a lot of energy. It's very energy hungry with 2 and then 3, but Electric type specializes in generating energy easily and moving that energy around. So we're running Zeraora because it generates an energy when you start with it, and then you can move that energy into Raichu with an elemental switch and start attacking with that right away. I'm also running Charging Cord, so when Raichu dies, it's going to move its energy down onto the bench if you have it. And one Pichu, because a lot of the time you want Raichu starting in the active zone so you can get its draw off when you're going first. But just in case, I think it's nice to have a Pichu that you can either start with or you can go into later and just generate an energy, sack it, and then go into Pikachu later. I also have 2 Oricorios because this is going to single-handedly win you games. It's also a good Pokemon you can stall with by sending out for a turn or 2. We need an X speed just in case you start with an Oricorio or a Zeraora and you want to X speed into Raichu or Pichu. I think red is pretty crucial because you're only doing 150 damage with Thunderbolt, and there's a lot of decks in the game that's just not going to quite be enough, especially if they're running like Espeon and they have a Cape on it. You want to be able to one-shot them, and that's what red is for. And then, of course, Cape, because this is a very low HP deck, and Cape is going to help keep some of these guys alive. So honestly, this has a ton of potential in my mind. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Those are all the decks I cooked up so far, and I'll see you guys in the next video.